Yo, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. Today we are on day 14, or no, I'm sorry, day 9, task 14 of the advent of cyber. I'm sorry I was gone last week, so I did miss some, but I'm actually kind of okay with it because this one jumps up a lot in skill level, so I want you guys to make sure you get a good explanation of this and had some time to work on it yourselves to try and learn this. So this is a huge skill that you're going to see in this lab that is very much needed in the pen testing industry. So let's go ahead and hop in learning objectives using metasploit, network pivoting, and post exploitation. Okay, cool. Docker. So what is Docker? Docker is a way to package applications and associated dependencies into a single unit called an image. So it's virtual computing times 17,000. It's literally a containerized environment. That's exactly what it is. So you can see here they're showing that the existence of this file at the root directory of a file system shows that you're in a Docker instance. So that's fine. What's Metasploit? If you guys don't know what Metasploit is by now, go back and check out one of my Metasploit box on TryHackMe. And if you guys don't know what a Metasploit session is, check that out as well. I'm not going to dive too deep into the little things on this one because I do want to make sure we get to the important parts of the content and the concepts that they're trying to get you to get. So Meterpreter is when you have a shell on a box and Metasploit takes it over and it becomes a Meterpreter shell, which is a little bit, you can do a few more things. That's basically what they're saying. So and you'll see what I mean by you can do a few more things. So the important thing here is that they want you to upgrade to a Meterpreter shell versus a regular shell so that you can have the added functionality of adding routes, which is what we're going to add. So all right, here's a big one. What is pivoting? This is huge. And the reason this is huge is because people don't always understand why you do it or the reasons behind it, I guess. So here's pen tester, right? Okay, I took over this Docker container. Now what? Right? Now, some people mistake pivoting with lateral movement, okay? And that is a big difference. And this is what I'm going to tell you. So here is a compromised container. Now, here's the other containers and another machine. So some people think, okay, well, I go to this machine, and then now I'm okay. Now I'm over to this machine. Okay, now I'm over to this machine. That is lateral movement. You are moving laterally. Moving, not pivoting. Think about when you have a basketball and you got your pivot foot. You're moving, but you're keeping that pivot. You do not lose the pivot. That's the difference between movement, lateral movement, and pivoting. You keep this container. Now, why would you want to pivot versus laterally move? So, for instance, if I was a hacker, I hack into this machine. Why would I want to pivot over here instead of just hack into this machine? Well, the difference is if I was, let's say we had this line here, if you guys can see this. If I took this machine and then I took this machine, all it would be is now I just have a straight line connection to this machine. That's all I did. I just hacked in this machine. That's it. A pivot is different in the sense that I needed this machine. Why did I need it? Maybe this machine is allowed to talk to this one, but I'm not. So for instance, I ping this machine over here and it's not replying, doesn't respond. Let's say this machine has a firewall and I'm not allowed to get through it. This machine is, because this might be a web server that talks to a database or something. You need the pivot. That's the difference. You only pivot when you need to. Lateral movement you do consistently. So let's go ahead and hop into the lab. So first things first, we got to spin up Metasploit. And you'll see it'll take a second. It was actually pretty cool. The first time I loaded up, I got this exact one, which was pretty cool because you rarely see the same ones like that. It's just a likelihood thing. But you can see, here we are. We're on Metasploit. Now, one thing, there's a couple of snafus on this one. Pay attention. If you're doing this with the attack box, it won't work. You have to go up here and you have to go to... Okay, it's not up here now, but you have to change it to the Kali box. It won't work on the attack box because the attack box has Metasploit framework 5, not 6, and it will not work. This exploit is not in 5. So make sure you're on the Kali box. Now, to search for... So they're telling us what we're basically going to have as far as we know that... Okay, so this is a Postgres one. This is an example of what's going to come up. So we're going to skip to that. using interpreter pivot. We're going to go through all this, so don't worry. So now we're at the challenge. So first things first, we're going to nmap, and you can nmap in Metasploit. So don't worry if you say, well, why'd you open Metasploit first? Doesn't matter. You can nmap directly in here. So 1010, 130, 212. All right, so you can see it's going to run pretty fast. You can see we didn't do the... All right, so you can see how it says execute and then nmap. If Metasploit can't read your command, it's going to execute on the host. So that means to tell me that it's going to run on the host because it doesn't know what nmap is. Perfect. So now we see that we have port 80 open. So the first question it asks us is what port is open. It's 80. There you go. So now we're on we know that port 80 is open. We know it's a web server. So now what we're going to do, just like I would always do, open it up, and we're going to go to the website. So HTTP 10.10.130.212. Okay. And we'll go ahead and make this full screen. You can see this is just a whatever blank page. But what we can do is we can go ahead here, say more tools. We can just go to developer tools. Am I missing web developer tools? And you can see I always like to change this. Not like that, excuse me. I always like to change this, but you don't have to because this is a temporary. I like it over here. So there's a couple ways you can do this. They show you how to do it on the network path. I actually like to go over here to storage, not accessibility, storage. And you can see there's two cookies here. And the cookies are Laravel and the XSRF cookie. Well, the Laravel tells us right there what framework they're using, okay? Or what they're using, basically. So you can see Laravel applications, this exploit actually works for them, right? It's called that. So what are we going to do? We're going to search. So search Laravel on Metasploit, and you can see there's two exploits here. We have exploit Laravel token unserialization, and then ignition remote code execution. That sounds like the one we want. We want remote code execution. So we're going to use number 1. Okay, so now we're there. And then we're going to say, now they have you just go ahead and type a IP address so that you can see your own IP. Now the reason for this is if you make sure you read these notes, they want you to use the ETH0 as the L host. So we'll go ahead and set L host ETH0. And the reason they want you to do this is because usually you'd be using the TUN0, which is the tunneling interface. They don't want you to do that on this. That's fine. Good to know. We changed it. If this is going over your head, guys, that's okay. The concept is what I want you to know. I don't necessarily need you to know how to do everything that's going on. It's the concept and why. That's the important, the why. Okay. So now we're already in here. So you can see they want us to go ahead and run it. Now, you don't have to run it this way. You'll see that they run it this way. You don't have to run it this way. A lot of people, when they use Metasploit, they'll actually set these options. So like I could set the R hosts instead of typing run R host, but for their sake, I'm going to do it the same way so that way you see it. So R host equals 10.10.130.212. I don't have to do the L host because I did actually set that. Now HTTP client timeout equals 20. Now this is just the best settings for this lab, but like it says here, it actually shows you if you have a slower internet session or something like that, you may want to change that to something else. So we went ahead and run it. The target appears to be vulnerable, so it checked it first. Perfect. And then once it actually executes, command shell 1 open. So now we have a session on this. It actually injected it, and we have a session. So now if I go over here and I say ls, oh, it hasn't actually gone over yet. Give it a sec. There we go. ls, it gave me the actual ls. So perfect. So what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and background it. So Control Z, and we background it so that we can do this. We say sessions tac u, and we're going to say, and the tac u stands for upgrade, and we're going to specify we want session 1 to be upgraded to a interpreter shell. This gives us more capabilities, and you'll see what I mean here because we're going to route traffic. Okay, so it actually failed to do that. let's see what happened. Let's see if it actually did. So sessions. I have 2. So let's say sessions tech. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so sessions tech I. And we'll say interact with 2. So now we have a interpreter session. Okay, you can see that. Now you can see the reason this failed is because you can see these connections over here. And we'll go through it here, but I'll show you what I mean. So now, with Meterpreter, we have actually more commands. You can see I type help, and look at all these extra commands we get. That's a Meterpreter shell. It's different than a regular shell. So that's kind of why they have you do that. So now, we'll go ahead and they wanted us to background that shell and go back to the original. And so we'll do sessions interact tac I and then 1. So now we're back in the original, and they want us to cat the var www.environment. Now the reason they do this is because you'll see in this .environment we actually have some information. You can see right here we have database host. So what's that tell you? So when a website's talking, right, let's say it's storing usernames, passwords, whatever, it's reaching out to a database that's stored, the information's stored on a database. It's not sitting on the web server. But this tells us right there that the database, there's the host name right there. So I have the database host name. So now I can start looking for the database. So we have this. So now what we're going to do is go back into the interpreter shell. And so that's session 2. And the reason I'm going back with the interpreter shell, maybe it automatically did it to, I think I typed it wrong. Sessions. Oh yeah, I didn't do the tac I for interact. Interact 2. So now I'm in the interpreter shell. Now I can say resolve. Now it will actually go ahead and resolve this for me. Web service database. Okay. So web service database. And you can see it gives me an IP address for the web service. So it actually was able to enumerate the IP. Why is this important? This IP, so pay attention. We hacked into the web server. We're in the web server right now. But we cannot directly access, this IP. Why? Because that's a database behind the firewall. So we're going to take the hack that we have the session in the web server, and we're going to use it to then reach out and attack the database. So that's why we need this IP. So now we have the IP. So the other thing they're showing you here is if you actually look, the hidden file Docker environment is there. So that tells us we're in the Docker environment as well. So now we need to add the route 172.28.101.51. And then /32 just specifies that it's the only one I want. I don't want it on anything else. Okay. And we want, what do we do? Invalid subnet mask, probably because I've already added this. So let me make sure. Route print. Nope. Oh, that's why, because I'm in the interpreter session, not in the, okay. So route print, just to make sure. Okay, there's no routes. Perfect. So we're going to say route add 172.28.101.51. And the reason we're doing that in the -32 network just means it's the individual. And we want session 1 to route through that. So what's that tell them? That means whenever I do something in Meterpreter, I want it to route through session 1. Okay. And then, so when I do like, an exploit, or if I want to in-map something or whatever, it's going to route through session 1, meaning all my traffic is going to go through the web server first and then hit whatever I tell it to. That means now I can talk to whatever that web server can talk to. That's huge. So now we're going to add the second route. And the second route is a default route by Docker, and it explains that to you. So 17.0.1, 32. All right, so now when we show, or when we print routes, you can see we've got these two routes. Okay. Now, the cool thing is, before we were not able to talk to that web or that database. We were never able to talk to it. We didn't even see it on our scans. But now, check it out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we want to go ahead and use, and we want to dump the schema. So use auxiliary and scanner, Postgres, and then schema dump. So for most of you, you don't realize that there's a lot of actually scanners in Metasploit. So it's really nice and handy. So run. Now, again, you don't have to do this way. If you guys know how to set the options in Metasploit, you can go ahead and do that. So run Postgres. Now we know the name and password of the Postgres. Actually, do we yet? Yeah, we do. So we're running Postgres, and we know that because right here, where was it? Here's the username and password, Postgres. So we know the username and password. So what we're going to do, go ahead and run it. Postgres at 172.28.101.51. So now we should keyword. So now we've got some information about the database names. So now we have database table, columns. So we have a table named users. That's pretty important to us probably, right? I know I want the users, right? The table name user ID, I don't really care about that, but the usernames, I want that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say use auxiliary admin Postgres. And keep in mind, this is just a proof of concept. You don't have to follow this specific exact attack every single time. When pivoting, it's all about using it to your advantage, not necessarily needing to get to a Postgres database. There's many cases where you may need to pivot for another reason. So Postgres, those are just the names and passwords. That's all I'm typing in there. 172.28.101.51 Postgres. And now we're using SQL here. So we're saying SQL equals, and we want to select all from users. So we want to select everything from the user database, hit enter, and you can see we have now, there's only one user and one name, password, Santa and password. Okay, so that's cool. We ended up getting Santa's password now. That's really big. So now what do we want to do? So now we want to keep pivoting. We want to keep using the tool we have and pivot. So what are we going to do? We're going to set up the SOCKS proxy. Now what you can see, you can create SOCKS proxy with Metasploit. So we're going to go ahead and set this up. What this is going to do is set up a proxy inside the environment that we can now pivot with. And you're going to see what I mean. So use auxiliary server SOCKS, if I can type, proxy. Okay. And this is what it's going to do. We're going to run serve host. What it's going to do is it's going to set this up on that server that we were talking about. 127.0.0.1 serve port, and you can do whatever port you want. We're going to do 9050 version 4a. Okay, so now it's going to run. You see it starting it up, and then you're going to see that we actually test it first, and I'll show you why this was important to do. So starting the SOCKS proxy server, there we go. So now from here, we're just going to say, okay, we want to set up proxy chains, TACQ, nmap. So if you're not familiar with proxy chains, it allows you to run commands using proxy chains, meaning it's going to run through proxies. So we just set up the proxy server where we wanted it. So now when we run a command like this, like nmap, check it out. So nmap, tac in, tac st, tac pin, port 22 and 80. 443 and 5432. Those are just the ports we're scanning. 172.17.0.1. Now, if you remember, we were not able to access this ever. Now when we hit nmap, look at this. we just in-mapped another machine inside their network, okay, inside their network from outside their network. Now, why is that cool? We just used the web server that we took over at first and set up that as a proxy server. We in-mapped, and that server said, okay, I'm going to send you the in-map. So I used in-map to then send it to the internal servers that I'm not able to access and get the results back. Now, that means I can now touch internal servers that I'm not supposed to be able to get to because I'm using that web server that we initially took over as a pivot. So keep that in mind. So now we see that SSH is up. So what's the first thing we want to try? Obviously, we want to try Santa's password. Is Santa's password the correct password for SSH? So auxiliary, scanner, SSH login. Okay, now we're going to run SSH Santa. That was his username. And then his password was P4 $W0RD. Okay. And then at 172.17.0.1. So now we're logging into or SSHing technically internally. Think of it that way. That's what's crazy. So we're starting, we're in. It says brute forcing, but we gave it the username and password. So, okay. So now check this out. We are actually, who am I? We're Santa, or we're root. Excuse me. We didn't even go into it. So what session did we create? 3. So now sessions, tac I for interact, 3. Okay. It says TTY name failed, but look, who am I? And we're root on that third box. So we started our machine, pivoted into the web server, went from that web server and gained root access to another server. So we're pivoting in the network. So, but we have to have that pivot because we can't directly connect to these because it's behind either a firewall, whatever. So now we say ls, and there should be a root.txt, cat root.txt, and boom, there is our flag. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can do this. Keep that in mind. So that is the actual hands-on portion. But let's go ahead and look at it, the answers. So the first VM, what ports were open? 80, because that was the web server we took over. The Laravel was the framework that the web application was designed with. What CVE is the application vulnerable to? So the way you could check this is when you check options, or check info. So we'll go ahead and exit. Okay, so we'll say use or search Laravel, and you remember there's only 2, so use 1. Now show info, and you can see there's the CVE right there. So that's how you get that information. Now, what command can be used to upgrade the last open session? That's sessions tac u-1, tac 1. That is saying upgrade session 1. Now, what file indicates a session has been opened with Docker container? If you remember, that's that hidden file, Docker environment. Now, what file often contains useful credentials for web applications? That's the environment folder. Now, why would it have useful stuff? Obviously, that's the environment. It needs to know what database am I going to? What's the name, password? How do I get into this database? That type of stuff. Now, what database table contains useful credentials? The user's database. What's Santa's password? If you remember, we did P4SWRD. What ports were open on the host machine? The second machine we took over, it was 22 and 80. That's how we got SSH'd in. And then what is the root flag? It's right there. We just captured it. And there you go. There you go. That is it, guys. I know this one is a little bit more complex, so if you have questions on this one, hop in the Discord and ask away, because I can explain this one, but it takes a lot more than a 20-minute video, and we had to get through these answers for you guys. So it's slightly confusing, but it's actually an insanely powerful tool. Just know that you only want to pivot when you need to and not pivot just for the heck of it. So hopefully you guys like it. Hit that like button, hit that sub button, and thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a great, great Christmas.